but she actually had on her phone. Did you have something on your phone?
Yeah, I wrote a little script.
She had something on her phone that in her head she thought, oh God, what comes next? And she looked at her phone, okay? So she actually just talked to us nonstop. Your presentation was great. I'm gonna make a couple of suggestions. Go back to,
Jordan too, your additions
go,
are great.
I think it's your first map. Go to your first map. This is just cartography here. I can't, and maybe I'm blind, I can't see your trails.
Okay.
And the trails are really, really good. The other thing is, if you can, I think you can in the story maps, if you get a legend to come up this side,
Okay.
your legend will come up.
Yeah, we didn't know. We tried. We just didn't know how to do it really well.
When you
So
said trails, I actually,
Yeah.
okay.
I think
Yeah.
we can make the trail lines a little thicker and
Yeah.
kind of zoom
Yeah.
in.
I like that. Okay, good job.
thank you.
All right, so now we're doing Kylie and Katie.
I get the big thing about talking, and she just gets up and talks to the bar stuff.
I know.
Yeah.
We got a nice confident group here. I need my glasses, because I'm blind. All right, let's pull yours up.
North Dakota.
You see it?
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen one on North Dakota.
Oh, and it's gonna be a good one. We're excited.
Just gotta
Okay, do you guys want me to do the timer so you can see it?
Sure. Yeah.
Same
so
way?
it'd be right
Okay.
up there.
Oh, cool. So you can see what
There you go.
All right. So me
You're
and
on.
Kylie did the state North Dakota, and we analyzed how climate change influenced flooding in North Dakota. So I'm gonna fly by this really quickly since I want to get to the maps. But a 101 in North Dakota, it's one of our most rural states in America. The population is it's majority white population, some Native American, and the ratio to females and males are equal. Here are some state symbols: flowers, prairie rose, birded western meadowlark, and the animals are bighorn sheep and river otters. And what we're going to be analyzing today is climate change. And since climate change is something that we have to solve, it has influenced North Dakota by having more rainstorms, and that influenced flooding in their rivers.
Going back to the description of the problem, like we said, we're talking about climate change. This state has warmed about 2 degrees in the past decade, and then as Katie said, rainfalls have become more intense. And due to those increased rainstorms, it led to a lot of flooding.
And then here's just some things that can happen from flooding and how it affects the state. So our first map is something we actually all did. It was the introduction of stream gauges, and this gives kind of an introduction into the measurement of the lakes in North Dakota. So here, if you scroll down for right here. It shows live stream gauges, and you can see here and here that these are major floods that are actually going on in North Dakota, while the other small dots are either unknown or not very that big of a problem. And we can see also just the main lakes and streams in North Dakota from here as well. Here's our second map. It's kind of a closer look in how it actually affects a county in North Dakota. This is Linton County. And we can see that this is a river that is surrounded. And then the blue is the analysis of how it would impact the county. So it would go up here, and these are areas that have agriculture and homes, neighborhoods, and these all would affect in a closer range, so it would affect poorly.
And North Dakota, their biggest, their biggest economy is agriculture. So when we have all these floods, it really decreases their livestock and their farmland, and so it makes their economy kind of hurt. And then lastly, we have we did a buffer on the major floods that happen in the most populated areas. So we did them from 1 to 7 miles because in our research we found that those were the most impacted areas in in that radius. So we have 1 to 3 miles, and that's going to be this green area, and then 4 to 5, and then 6 and 7. So you can see that in these areas they're going to be the most damaged and affected by these floods. And then how to help. So some things that we can do to help decrease the effects of these floods is kind of like building these small barriers. A lot of people in North Dakota end up doing this due to try to protect like either their farm, their houses, and even roads. And then they also just like let these pools kind of form outside so that it'll reduce the power of the floodwaters. And then these are also some things we can do to try and help. Like I said, livestock is like one of the most things that gets damaged by these floods. So if we try and cut back on meat and dairy, cut back on flying, because that's just, you know, emissions into the atmosphere, and then reduce your energy use, and then respect green places.
So thank you for listening about how climate change, right on time, affects North Dakota and how it impacts flooding, and not good.
In a negative way.
Yeah.
Okay, let me comment on two things. First of all, I love your movies in the back.
Oh, the
I
videos.
thought the videos are good.
Thanks,
Go
Ed.
go back to where you buffered, and let me just tell you one other thing. I mean, your project's good, but if you're going to do one other thing, if you see those buffers, if you actually, there's that enrich tool. If you enrich those buffers, you will see how many people live in that buffer zone.
Okay.
So you could say,
Population.
you could say how many people were affected, you could say how many buildings were affected, but you could, that's another set of analysis you can do for that. Okay? Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, who's my next one? Hey, Ryan, are you next? Okay. Is that right? Can you look at that sheet? You're right, it's for you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you can sit here and talk from there. That's totally fine. Do you want the timer here or not? Do you want me to verbally prompt you or just want me to sit in here?
You can just put it there.
Okay. Hey, Ryan, talking about Arizona.
All right. Hello. Timer. Yep. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my presentation on Arizona. I have also done the topic of drought, but before we get into that, let's just do. Let's do a little overview of Arizona itself. Population of 7.3 million, a climate of generally arid. You might know it for the Grand Canyon National Park, which I've depicted right up here with the Colorado River running through it. I also included on the map Native American reservations and some of the major cities of Arizona depicted by these dots, and the diamonds are the ones with 100,000 plus population. I also included, of course, the Arizona state capital of Phoenix, depicted by a star. You'll see that show up later in the presentation as well. Now, Arizona has a problem like the previous state before. It has a problem of drought. This map depicts the drought across Arizona. I'm really hoping it will load in, but you can see here on this side, this chart depicts the different degrees of drought and what they represent, as well as the percentages, as I was about to say, averaged out of the state that has been in that degree of drought over the last 20 years, as Arizona has been in some degree of drought for the last 20 years. You can see that a bit more comprehensive and loaded in with this chart here. This depicts the degree of drought that parts of Arizona have been in over time. Especially bad is 2021, which left most of Arizona in the most severe stage of exceptional drought for a very long period of time. Drought is generally a much bigger problem here, as there is already very little water, as indicated by this map showing average precipitation in different areas, and very high temperatures. This computer is not working.
Tech issues, I'm sorry.
Okay, there you go. Arizona has average temperature of 65 degrees in the winter and often gets over 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer. This problem is,
Is it
come
not
on.
sliding?
It is not sliding.
Oh.
It's a,
These sliders aren't sliding.
So why would that be, Catherine? Is that
It's not
an internet
good.
issue?
he's not getting enough internet.
Yeah, I had some internet issues this morning in third period.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ryan.
It's okay.
Okay, we can look at it later.
So this map on this side depicts the water usage. One of the problems that makes this even worse, and it's going to make it worse in the future, is Arizona's increasing population, which further increases water demand on the already limited supply. The water demand, as you would have been able to see, is concentrated around spots of higher population, like Phoenix, Arizona. The map on the left side is a depiction of where that water is coming from. A lot of it is groundwater that doesn't come from the streams. So this map depicts the percentage of it that is groundwater, with darker areas using more groundwater and lighter areas using more other types of water. The spots on the map are a density concentration of the wells. But I assure you there are wells everywhere. It is most concentrated again around public areas of high population. Finally,
Finish up?
okay, finishing up, last slide. Finally, what is that water going towards? Most of it, 72%, is going towards agriculture, despite agriculture only making up 2% of Arizona's economy. That is especially because, if you'll see on the map here, over time, a lot of the crop that is grown, please stop. Why? Is cotton. All the purple that you see on this map is a depiction of the of cotton being grown, which uses up a lot of water compared to other crops. So looking into the future, especially with climate change further decreasing the water supplies, obviously the main way of combating this would be to stop climate change directly. But as a smaller solution is to move some of that water usage away from agriculture into more essential parts of life by planting less water draining crops.
Did a very good job of managing computer talking and doing that. Very, very, very well done.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, A. Ryan, and great recovery when we had tech issues, because then you explained what was going to show anyway. That was great recovery.
Thank you.
So
Sometimes I
very professional. You guys are ready for jobs.
I think it's hardwired would probably be better. I don't know.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, who's next? Who's next? Who's next on the list after Aaron? Is it Danielle and Emily? All right, I'm blind. You guys see it? Did you send it through here? Your link, your published link? Is it ringing a bell? So you would have done that right there.
Yeah, I did something. Should I try again? New control F is on. Hold on.
I don't see it. Let's go to the next. Why don't you re-put the link in and let's go to the next group. Who's the next group? Who's next on our list? Yes, Mr. Karen. Are you ready? All right, Megan is ready. And I know you're in here. I saw you. You see it? There you are. All right, hold on. Give me a minute. We got to get organized here. Okay, so I'll give you 4 minutes then. All right, Megan. In California.
Okay, so I did my project on the effective wildfire in California. So as a little background, California is a very populated state. It has a little over 39.5 million people, and the population density around the cities is very high, and the climate is very dry. It doesn't rain a lot. So I'm going to talk about what defines a wildfire hazard. There are three main things: precipitation, temperature, and wind. So with less moisture, which comes from rain, wildfires are more likely to recur. So that's a big factor in determining fire seasons. Temperature, with warmer temperatures, the sunlight is more prevalent and the land temperature is higher, so fires are more likely to occur with that. And when wind moves, wind moves the wildfires across landscapes. So when there's more wind, the fires spread faster. So I have a timeline of notable wildfires in California from 1990 to 2022. So there's the Marble Cone Fire, which happened in 1997. The cause was lightning. There's only one county affected, and there was 0 deaths. And then the Cedar Fire in 2003, the Zachar Fire in 2007, Rush in 2012, Thomas in 2017, and most notably the August Complex in 2020. The cause of this was also lightning. There were 7 counties affected, and over 1 million acres burned, and there was a death. So there's a pretty big jump between the fire in 1997 and 2020. And I think global warming contributed a lot to this because the temperature has risen and there's more unpredictable weather patterns. So the Sierra Nevada is a mountain range in California that a lot of wildfires occur on. So I have the parameters of the mountain range in 2010, and I also have 2021. So down here, I compared the two. So you can see, if you look at the edges of the mountain, they have significantly decreased from 2010 to 2020.
Nice map.
Yeah, so this shows the parameters of the mountain range of the Sierra Nevada has retreated. And so basically this is because wildfires burn out faster on mountains, especially the slope, which can lead to the edges of the range being favored for spreading, so the ranges are gonna start to decrease. So basically,
Like by weather and erosion?
like the fires, they prefer like the bottom of the mountain. Yeah. So not all the changes of the mountain can be like attributed to the wildfires, but there's a significant amount because of the combination of increasing global temperatures and lack of precipitation.
Very interesting.
That last comparison thing's very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very nice.
Thanks, Megan. Right on time. Yeah, very nice. You guys are feeling so impressed. Thank you. Okay, wait, I'm looking. Abilene, are we ready or? I think so. Let's check it. Oh, it showed up. Good job. Okay. All right, Danielle and Abilene.
Okay, so our midterm was on the wildfires of Arizona.
Talk loud enough so everyone can hear you.
So Arizona is also known as the Grand Canyon State. It achieved statehood on February 14th, 1912. Originally, it was part of the Spanish and Mexican territories,
The land was ceded to the US in 1848 and then became a separate territory in 1863.
In this map, we highlighted the state of Arizona itself, the capital Phoenix in the center there. And other major cities that Arizona is majorly known for, as well as the main attraction, which is the Grand Canyon, which is up in the top left.
Okay, so our first map, just as like in general, Arizona has a long history. Well, not just Arizona, the West Coast in general has a long history of wildfires, and it is victims of countless major wildfires. The largest wildfire that Arizona faced took place in Four Peaks Wilderness in 1996. It burned approximately 61,000 acres of land. Lone Fire was its name. It burned its way through the Mazatzal Mountains, Four Peaks Wilderness, and portions of the Tonto National Forest. The fire, which was caused by humans, torched an isolated Ponderosa pine forest that surrounded the 7,500-foot summit of Four Peaks and burned for a grand total of 11 days. This next map just shows like a closer look of where exactly the fire burned.
In this next map, we analyze more of the correlation between drought and wildfires. Drought can be intensified by unusually warm temperatures, and when combined with very low precipitation and snowpack, extreme heat can lead to decreased snowfall, dry soils, and large-scale tree deaths, which can all also increase chances of wildfires. Not only has Arizona is it close to the equator, but it also isn't very close to any major bodies of water. It has been going through a drought for 27 years and with like 1 or 2 year gaps in between of wet years. And they're measured using a scale that is, 27-year drought. This is a long-term drought because in between each wet year is extended period of dry years. Arizona has experienced a majority of severe and extreme drought. The drought impacts the water supply to its residents, agriculture, vegetation, wildlife, and causes other wildfires.
Okay, I don't know whether I got told you guys to do this or not, but just look at that first page map. Love it, love it.
Yeah, you did tell us.
I'm telling you guys, you gotta make use of those base maps. And you can't just keep using, they have so many of them. Good, I like
So
that.
what is that? Do you guys remember? Beautiful.
It was, I think it's on like
I think it's called natural vegetation. You
vegetation. It was
Yeah.
vegetation, yeah.
gotta go and Landsat search for base maps.
Yeah.
This
Beautiful.
looks really good.
It was one of the layers we had to search
Yeah.
in on
Yeah.
our GSS.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah.
Good job.
Very good job. Okay, I think Emma, you ready? Okay. And there's their 4 minutes. Love it. You would?
I think I'm either gonna tell them very fast or go overtime.
Okay, they'll be fine. Where are you? Do you see it? I swear you're, there it is. Okay, you are good. Hold on, let me get your time. So you can kind of glance down and see it. All right, Emma, California.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, so my presentation is called California's Environment and Forest Fire Patterns, and it's basically comparing data like population, drought, and vegetation to forest fires and the similarities and patterns. So just some basics about California. The West Coast borders about 900 miles on the Pacific Ocean. They have around 39.5 million for their population, with 39% Latino and 36% white. And California became the 31st state in 1850. So my first map is population and vegetation. And when you look at a map like population, you can often see similarities when you look at other data, like you'll see the same patches that seem to be low in population, or this was low in one thing, especially ones that have to do with people, because it's gonna look similar. So for the first one, I am comparing vegetation to the population. So I can zoom in. And here you will see where it's light pink, and on most maps, you're just gonna always see the same patch at the bottom of the state. And the reason for this, when you look at the vegetation, is there's lots of green, which is desert scrub. And I will talk about that in a second, but there's also a pattern here. There's like a swivel in the middle of the state that also lines up with population. And then there's also some gray patches where there's high population. So even though these are two completely different types of data, the similarities and the same kind of patterns match. And so the green patch is the Mojave Desert. And it's basically a biome that has a lot of desert plants like the cacti and succulents, and it gets very little rain, and it's just a desert that has a lot of vegetation. And then the yellow line kind of in the middle, it's like that swivel, is a lot of deciduous orchards. And California used to have just under 1 million deciduous orchards in the 90s, but they have been rapidly decreasing. And the population around them has been increasing as they are going away. There's more room for more people to grow. And then the gray patches were just super urban areas like Los Angeles, where there's very little vegetation. And on the left, I have a picture of the Mojave Desert. And then on the right, there's a picture of an deciduous orchard. And my next one is evapotranspiration with forest fires. And the dictionary definition is the process by which water is transferred from the land to the atmosphere by evaporation from the soil and other surfaces, and by transpiration from plants. So evaporation and transpiration is something that you learn in science and you kind of know and have heard about, but the combination of the two is not something you quite learn about, especially when hearing how it impacts terrain and climates. And it's been rapidly increasing along with climate change, which makes forest fires start a whole lot easier. It makes them spread faster, get more out of control, and more deadly. And right here is just a kind of visual representation of how evapotranspiration works. And here's my map, and the green is all of the forest fires from the past 20 years, from 2000 to 2020. And when you play it and compare the evapotranspiration, you'll see that the lines of where evapotranspiration was affecting California, a lot of forest fires occurred, especially around 2016. It kind of comes and then
Time and then, yeah.
yeah, I'll speed it up. Around 2016, it kind of like stays, and because there's some years where it comes and some years where it goes, and after 2016, it doesn't really go away, and it just progressively gets kind of worse. The next one is, oh, let me go fast. Drought and fire increases, which is kind of obvious, but when you play this, I made it so that the most recent forest fires from 2020 aren't really visible at the beginning in the early 2000s. But as the map moves on and the droughts get worse, you'll be able to see the most recent forest fires, and then you can't really see them regardless, but the ones from 2000 are very tiny orange ones that you can see better in the beginning, and then as we get closer to 2020, they get less noticeable. So they're kind of going with the time without actually moving, so you can see all of them at the same time. And that's it.
I really go back to that because I really want to comment on some of it. You really did a good job on this.
Thank you.
Keep going up, go back.
It's loading slowly.
I think it's this previous right there. No, keep going.
This one?
Yes, okay. I love the way you did this.
Mhm.
It might be, you talked about 3 areas.
Yeah, I kept it to 3 because
No,
You were
that's
trying to
fine.
keep it
I
short.
think if I were you, I would have put a map note
mm-hmm.
on each area you talked about. I mean, it's so obvious how it is,
Yeah.
but if you put that map note on there, I
Mhm.
think everybody would, that was a wonderful map.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Parker, are you ready? Okay. Get Parker's loaded up. Parker's our driver, so you know Parker.
I do know. Paul.
Parker's your right hand when you're here.
Right.
Okay.
We're doing okay.
Oh, we're doing okay.
So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Parker, and my story map is about Colorado. And I approached my midterm from a slightly different angle in that while I'm talking about the environment, I'm also discussing how that impacts the homeless population, because that's a major issue within the state. So something important to note about Colorado is that throughout the state, there are very different terrains and geographical features. And this also means that the weather and temperatures within these different areas are very different. And the reason I bring this up is that with the homeless population, being that they do not have a home, it can be very difficult to live in these different terrains. And this is a major issue, and I think it needs to be addressed. So to discuss this further, I decided to use 3 different kinds of maps. And my first one, I'll try to expand it here, if it would, is showing the different geographical features and different aspects of the nature within the state. And I boxed it out in white here just so we can see it a little bit clearer. But as you can see over here, it's a little bit more plain and flat. And then as it gets closer to my right here, it gets a little bit rockier. And these blue patches show the national forests within Colorado. My next map is displaying, there we go, displaying the homeless population in Colorado in comparison to surrounding states. And you can see that while it's not the largest population within the United States, compared to the states just surrounding it, it is much bigger. And that is partially proof that there's something wrong in terms of legislation and decisions being made within the state to address this issue. And I also included a textured base map to show, again, that difference in terrain throughout different parts of the state. If I scroll down here, my next map is actually about politics in Colorado and the United States, because I think it's important to address that Colorado is a very progressive state. And in terms of many different social and just in general aspects of legislation, they're very progressive and make great decisions and that reflect positive growth for their population. But when it comes to homelessness, this is where Colorado comes up short. And we can also see in this map that surrounding states are much more conservative, and this is based off of senators primarily, but despite Colorado being more progressive than the surrounding states, their population of homeless people is much larger. So I thought that that was interesting to review. So what I think should be done about this issue is that, well, it needs to come from the people ourselves, and we need to use our voices, because the only way to make change within a government that's already progressive but doesn't address an important issue that impacts their people is by speaking up. And this is something that's already been happening within the state, but I think that we can help outside of Colorado too. Briefly, one more thing I wanted to talk about was something that Colorado is successful with, because I don't want to focus on only things that they're not doing well with. So, and this was something I originally wanted to be my first topic, but something Colorado succeeds in is that the LGBTQ population in Colorado has one of the lowest homeless rates throughout the entire United States. And you can see the increasing levels, with red being the most and this light yellow being the least. So I thought that that was something important to discuss too. And thank you.
You know, I come in here and I say things to you guys, and then actually sometimes you do them. When you mess around with these base maps, I'm telling you, it perks up what you're doing. Good job with that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very interesting, Parker. Very good. All right, Rima and Adriana, the time has come. We're so excited. We've been emailing. Let's get you guys ready to go. Oh my gosh, can't believe you guys found me here. Where are you? Here it is. Sure, Jay. We published. There we go. Ready? Sit down? Okay. All right, Rima and Adriana, take it away.
My state is about Oregon.
Talk out so everyone can, even I want Carter to be able to hear you way back.
Our map is about Oregon wildfires of 2021 and where are they more intense. Our background is Oregon is located in the Pacific Northwest of the Western United States. The population is 4.2 million people. There are 86.6 white and 3% Asian, 1.6 Black or African American. Wildfires are a major climate issue in Oregon, and the first wildfire started in May due to dry spring and not much snow. There are 1,661 wildfires in 2021 and 653,000 acres were damaged. Fires occur mostly during the spring and the summer because they're very dry, and that's why there aren't many on this map right now since it's January. This is my location map. I put USA major cities and filtered into population. So you can, as you can see, Portland is the highest population. The yellow where it is, the high it is. There are 645,291 people. So for this map, I discovered that wildfires occur mostly in forests. So there are wet forests and dry forests. So dry forests are basically there are ponderosa forests. So they're located in the central eastern Oregon, and that was the other one. Okay, and they occur every 2 to 25 years, and they're usually not that intense, but they occur a lot. And then for the wet forests, they occur a lot, but they're very rare. They occur every 200 to 100 of years, and they're located right here. There is the Douglas forest, the yellow one. I mean the blue one. Sorry. Okay, let's go that. Okay, now this is a visual summarization of where it is. This is the wet forest, and this is the dry forest. This is just like a visualization, like a summarized visualization, and the wet forest is located in the northwest of Oregon. Okay, this is basically, I just wanted to show where the fires usually occur more. This is the wildfires where they occur more. So they occur more in the dry forest area. So they're more intense, not more intense, but they occur. Okay. Now I researched the top 5 wildfires of Oregon of 2021, and I discovered that these 3 are the wet forest, which is pretty rare, and then they occur. I put 2 pictures so you can see how they look like, and they're all caused by lightning except for that one, which is undetermined. And I found a video, and this is the largest wildfire. It's called the Boot Lake one. It was in July 20th, so it was during the summer because of the heat. And I just want to show you how it looks like. So just play the 5 seconds. That's it. Thank you.
Show me the first couple maps. Okay. Tell me what that stuff is. What is pink?
So if you could scroll down to the thingy.
In the legend.
So yeah, so there are types of forests.
Okay, got it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, no, listen, this map has a lot of comments. You didn't make that legend, right? No. No, I know, but there's something about that being pink that I couldn't, I wanted it to be green. Because you're talking about, there's a certain kind of, when you
I
put it,
tried to change the color, but it's the one.
I know, but I just wanted to know if you made it or somebody else, so that's okay. Okay, good job.
Thank you.
I like the black.
Yeah, it's good, like adding the video and like multimedia. Yeah. All right. Next is Sneha Riley. You guys ready? Okay. see it?
Guys, you guys are doing a great job.
They are doing
Oh,
it.
it's actually right there.
Wait, show me on here.
It's like in the.
There it is. I'm looking forward to this one. You guys have done some really interesting stuff. Okay, there you go. Neha and Riley, Utah.
Hi, my name is Sneha and I worked with Riley. Our state is Utah and we are focusing on earthquakes. So Utah is located in the southwest of the United States. It's not a very diverse state with 86.4% of the population identifying as white. However, it is home to 60,000 Native Americans and 80% of the population lives in the state's capital, Salt Lake City. Utah is also known as the capital of the Mormon Church. Brigham Young, a major Mormon leader, founded Salt Lake City in 1847, and about 62% of the population identifies as Mormon. Moving on to climate, Utah is one of the driest states in the United States, and it has one of the lowest relative humidity percentages. And in recent times, due to climate change, it's really felt the effects of it with rising temperatures and heat waves, which has affected the agriculture and tourism industries. So our first map is a population map, and we categorized it by region counties. So the darker blue visualizes the region with the highest population. As you can see, we also have the top 10 major cities labeled with this black marker, with the capital as the red star, Salt Lake City. And the population is centered around the lakes that as the Jordan River passes through. And this region is also called the Wasatch region. And so every year, Utah is plagued with earthquakes. And this is due to the fault lines. So our second map picturizes earthquakes that have occurred since 2000 and fault lines that are updated or most recent as of 2018. And this concentration of fault lines and earthquakes right here are due to the Wasatch fault line, which is one of the most famous fault lines in the world. And most recently in 2020, Utah had one of their largest earthquakes, which was a 5.7 magnitude earthquake. And this is again due to the Wasatch fault.
Yeah, so what we did further with these earthquakes and fault lines are that we did an analysis to see which fault lines were closest to the earthquakes. So for this map, the purple and the blue lines here depict all of the fault lines in Utah, but the purple ones depict the ones that are closest to all the earthquakes, or otherwise like the ones that have caused the earthquakes. These little black dots all over here are the earthquakes, and then the orange lines represent like the distance between the earthquakes and the nearest fault lines. So you can really see the relationship between the earthquakes and the fault lines in this map. And then here in our next map, we use the same background layer as one of the earlier maps, which is where we divided Utah into population regions, with the darker colored green being the ones with the higher populations. And then we filtered out the earthquakes to see which populations were hit with the largest earthquakes. So the pink is representing like the bigger earthquakes. And as you can see, they still follow this trend in this fault zone here, the Wasatch fault zone. And then here you can't really see it, but there are multiple earthquakes like overlaying one another right here in Salt Lake City. So really a giant population of people is being affected by really big earthquakes every year. And so because of the frequency of all these earthquakes and the fact that they're so big and in such areas with such high populations, we think that again, given all the information, so many more people should be made aware of the risks they're taking by living in an area with so many fault lines, and how big those earthquakes are. And then they should also be prepared in the event of an emergency to see, where they should go, who they should contact to get resources and protection, safety, and all of that. And so, yeah, the news are big deal.
I think you are the third, I'm going to be wrong about this, but I think one person in John's class, and I think two of you guys have actually done some analysis. Did somebody in here do a buffer?
Yeah.
Yeah. The distance rule. Okay, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if you do analysis, that's an extra, those are extra points.
Yeah.
So I think, I know two of them did. I think somebody in John's did a few shed. Okay, good job, girl.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good job.
Interesting because it's still a middle of a plate, not on a plate boundary, but still have a significant number of earthquakes.
Yeah.
Why is there fault lines?
Huge fault.
Well, there is movement, in the middle of a plate as the stresses kind of,
So it could have cracked the plate.
oh yeah,
Like,
totally.
it's not sort of cracked open and it's like being twisted.
And the pressures are moving them, absolutely. All right, yes, of course, there's a pass right there. There's a pass right there. Who's next? I lost it. It went out of my head. Nadia, you ready?
Yeah.
So I did California, and for my project I did how does the climate and earthquakes impact the citizens and wildlife in California? So a lot of people believe that in California it's all like cities, but a common misconception is that it's cities, and actually 50% of the land is rural because California's main industry is agriculture, but 95% of the population lives in cities, making them very dense. So I am showing a picture of the high traffic present in the Los Angeles area. So I made a map based off of the population density versus the farmland, and I have the whole state highlighted. The green represents the farmland. And as you can see, is the farmland populations aren't as dense as the city populations, as you can see on the map. As well as, from what you can see, the Los Angeles area is the most dense because, and even its like surrounding areas are very dense, such as Santa Clarita, San Diego, because of the high amounts of tourism, and Hollywood. Their biggest disasters are earthquakes. So I included a photo of a result of an earthquake on a road, and wildfires, which this one was manifesting the forest. So factors relating to disaster are topography and population density. So areas that are more mountainous end up with more long-term effects from earthquakes, while areas of sequoia trees especially have worse effects from wildfires because there's deforestation going on. Since California has a very diverse topography, it's very mountainous, plate tectonics shift, and because of all the plate tectonic shifting, earthquakes are gonna take place. And we get earthquakes in the East Coast, but mostly they take place in the Appalachian area because they're very mountainous. But in the West Coast, there is way more mountains, and that's what causes earthquakes. Wildfires, on the other hand, are more
controllable to avoid because a lot of them are results of pollution. Some of them are results of the climate and droughts because California gets very little rain and it suffers from droughts and even really intense heat. But in Los Angeles, there's a high amount of factories and factories produce smog. So I decided to show a map of the major cities versus the fault lines for the earthquakes. And as you can see, most of the earthquakes take place around the Pacific Ocean. Some of them take place closer to Nevada and Oregon, but the worst effects are near the Pacific Ocean.
Can you zoom in on that?
And the areas that are affected worse by the earthquakes are San Francisco and the Bay Area. Because they are right on the Pacific Ocean. So this is the wildfires. I did the major cities versus the wildfires. The wildfires are in red. And from this map indicates that the areas affected worst by the wildfires are the Los Angeles areas and its surrounding areas such as Santa Clarita and Palm Desert and Anaheim, which is the highest population, not just for citizens, but for tourists because of tourist attractions such as Hollywood, Disneyland, and Anaheim. Now I'm going to talk about the wildlife. There's a lot of wildlife in California, but I'm only going to talk about 3 species because there are just so much. So the first one is the California quail. The second one is the coyotes. The image is not showing up for some reason, but it was supposed to be an image of a coyote. And then the California black bear, which is the most well known because of course the flag has the bear. So the map over here indicates where the high dense populations of each species is. And the pink is the quails. So the quails live more in the south. The coyotes are red, so they are more in the mid areas. And the black bears are purple, which they live in the more mountainous northern areas. And what this indicates to me is that the quails are heavily affected by the wildfires, while the black bears are heavily affected by the earthquakes, and the coyotes can be affected by either or. And one thing I noticed on the map is that there is barely any wildlife living in San Francisco and its surrounding areas. From what I can tell, it probably means from this map, it probably means that because San Francisco is an urban area, it's just a mostly human population.
Yeah, so finish up.
Okay. The last thing I included is how can citizens of California protect their wildlife and themselves during natural disaster, reducing the use of exhaust and smoke, consuming less factory products, volunteering out wildlife conservations, using environmentally friendly alternatives to everyday use items, during earthquakes, following earthquake drill guidelines, or even evacuating if necessary. And for visitors, checking the weather is very important to prepare for like anything that's going on, like any natural disaster. And that was my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks,
You did
Nadia.
a nice map. Good map.
Thank you.
Good map.
Yeah, sorry I stutter a lot. I'm not gonna come
You
with
did
it.
great. All right, thank you. All right, Jay, are you ready? Jay, you ready? Is your link in here? And Robbie and Kieran, you ready next?
Should I share it?
You need to put it into that. I think Robbie and Kieran might come up now. The one that's in the semester midterm folder, you need to add it to that. Or email it to me. Have you published and everything, Jay? Yeah. Okay. Kieran and Robbie, I think you're ready. Let's do it. Kieran and Robbie, we're gonna do that while Jay gets ready. There you go. All right, we're good on time, so no worries on time, okay? All right, Robbie and Kieran.
Texas, powered by what? Our whole topic is on the Texas power grid, and you might have heard recently the outage that happened last winter. A bunch of people died. We wanted to look into that problem a little further, see what could be done and what's happening right now. Yeah. So a little bit about Texas. Texas is they make about $2 trillion a year, so they play a pretty big role in our economy, and we want to keep them up and running and keep the lights on there. For the largest cities, and yeah, small little tidbits about Texas. So the U.S. is split up into 3 major power grids, that being the north and the or the south, west and the east power grid, and then Texas has its own independent power grid from those. ECOT, which is a company who runs pretty much all of Texas in their counties. Yeah.
This is the first time I've ever seen a map like that.
Really?
No, we should check out that.
I really like that. Good job.
We tried to have all the power lines, but we couldn't find one for the.
So that is accurate for their side, but we could not
The
find
eastern
the eastern side. So yeah.
Cool.
And then keep going a little more, and we're going to dig a little more into Texas, right? Specifically, here are their power plants. This is a bit of a shorter one. These are where their power plants and windmills are located. As you can see, they're decently spread out, but there's a bit of gaps missing here and there. Thus, you have to fill in those gaps with power lines, which then takes time and energy and money to maintain those power lines. So we can keep going a little more. All right, so these are all of the natural gas wells in Texas, basically fracking or just a normal oil rig.
That goes in a lot.
Yeah, we have all of the offshore oil rigs and all of the, I believe this is of 2022 or 2020, oil rigs. The red dots indicate earthquakes, actually. I thought that would be an interesting comparison to do fracking and earthquakes. And as you can see, there's a direct correlation between where the fracking is happening and the density or frequency of earthquakes. So yeah, we can keep moving a little more. All right, and this is Kieran's map. We have kind of a broad idea of the outages and the areas that are more frequently affected by outages, right? Instead of just dot by dot, we have whole counties highlighted in densities of red. Do you want to speak any more on this map?
We'll speak about it.
Absolutely. All right, got one of the cool split ones. So now we get where all the oil rigs and all the fracking's going on, mixed on top of where all the outages is, and also now the windmills and power plants in the state. And basically what we're seeing here is that there, as stated in a previous, it's almost over 70% of all of the power is being made in the upper half of Texas, and it's being shipped down to Austin and areas like Houston, which is expensive, it is time consuming, money consuming, and has a lot of failures. So The longer your route is, the more failure you have along your route, but. All right, anything else? All right, so what's the solution? 2 words, nationalization and winterization, right? We need to get the grid ready for a changing climate as winters get colder and colder and records are set every year. The grid needs to be up to date in Texas, and it's not been updated of recent. And we need to connect Texas to the rest of our nation, I believe. I don't think Texas should be independent. I think having one company having a responsibility of a $2 trillion state and their economy on their backs is not one company's duties. It should be a national goal of ours. So, thank you.
I have thoroughly enjoyed this. I've never seen this project. Well, I mean, they've never had a power outage.
That was all that.
I've never seen this project before, which I've seen so many. I very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
Very good.
Very good.
What was happening in Texas with that
It was-
in the winter where was that
Well,
because
so-
of a power failure? So when winter comes, it freezes all the power lines and all the fracking rigs. So once they're all, since it's all just Texas, if all of Texas goes under snow, you have no power, and then you can't go, oh, hi Virginia, can I have some power? Like,
No.
it's just them. So once all of everything freezes, they have no power.
And they're not used to it freezing, and they don't have the equipment for freezing because it doesn't often freeze or snow in Texas. So now they need to upgrade and prepare for that.
Very, very.
But with climate change and more extreme weather, both directions,
Exactly.
more of a problem.
Yeah.
Both, and probably in the summer to some extent too, there could be more failures.
No, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, great job. All right, you guys are doing such a great job. Wonderful. All right, Jay, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you email it to me or, okay. Let me go get the form. There you are.
Hello.
All right, so I think, there we go, Jay.
Oh dear.
You're ready. All right, Jay, Colorado.
Oh boy, I'm nervous.
You're gonna do fine. We're a friendly group, Jay. Remember, we're a family.
Okay. When do I start?
You are ready to go. Jay,
Okay.
take it away.
Hey, I am, as many of you probably know, my name is Jay. My state is Colorado. My goal here today is to bring awareness to some of the state's issues. Colorado is a beautiful state. It has spiraling plains, towering mountains. The state is also threatened by a wide variety of issues regarding water, fires, and ozone. Yeah, I'm just going to go to the next slide now. Okay. Colorado has 54 total Fourniers, or mountains that are above 14K feet tall. And there's a railroad that goes from, I believe, Durango to Silverton narrow gauge. Oh, Durango to Silverton, yeah. And there's also the Mesa Verde National Park, which is a historical Pueblo Native American heritage site. Thanks to Colorado's unprecedented drought. Actually, no, I'm reading the wrong thing. Okay. Like many other Western states, Colorado has drought problems. As you can see by the graph, Lake Mead's water level has decreased substantially since 2011. I mean, 2021. Colorado has been passing water conservation legislature, but I doubt that's going to be enough. It's most likely a global warming issue. So that's not something that can be handled that easily. As you can see here, last year, a lot of wildfires burned. This is the total number of wildfires, and this is the total number of million acres of land destroyed. Due to drought and climate change, wildfires in Colorado and other western states have been and will continue to be burnt. This is a very important issue because our incredibly underdeveloped and underfunded firefighting units need to be increased in. They need to wait. Hold on. Yeah, we need a stronger firefighting force. Biden said remarks that the firefighting force was too weak, or they weren't paid enough, and so the firefighting force needs to be paid and needs to be funded more in order to combat future wildfires. This is especially important considering Colorado's economy relies primarily on farming and on burnable resources such as cows, wheat, and what was it? Corn. Yeah, corn, that thing. Next, we can segue straight into ozone. Ozone is a highly toxic gas that is created when volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, and nitric acid come into contact with the UV rays from the sun. It's typically found up in the atmosphere where it protects us from harmful radiation, and like solar winds and whatnot. But down on Earth, it can cause heavy lung damage and increases the potency of chronic respiratory issues such as asthma.
All right, that's fine, but you can go ahead and keep going.
Oh,
Like, you have
okay,
more
thank
maps
you.
to show?
I do have one.
Okay.
I'm going yeah, the ozone sort of thing. Yeah, VOCs are commonly found in wildfire smoke, and nitric acid is a product of industry. So if we cut down on either one of those, ozone should decrease. I kind of went off on a tangent here about Gothic, which is a basically ghost town up in the mountains over here somewhere. And I noticed that it had a high level of this. I basically just noticed it had a high level of ozone for its population of literally 1.
Wow.
And it was like I don't know. It was like Colorado Springs levels of ozone. And there's like one guy that lives there, so he went on an NPR interview, by the way, talked about social distancing.
So you haven't found out why there's so much ozone from that one little place yet?
Yeah, I have a few ideas. Primarily, my idea was the skiing industry that is like kind of around there. Because there's a silver mine in the Gothic was originally a fairly large silver mining town, but it basically Ulysses S. Grant even visited at one point, but they closed the mine over a century ago, and so everyone left. My other idea was the national, what was it? Oh yeah, the RMBL, which is the Rocky Mountain Biological Laboratory, which like studies biology and whatnot, and a bunch of scientists gather typically around the summertime. But since it wasn't summer, so like basically no one was there, That might have been the reason why there was such high ozone, but I didn't really know for certain. So skiing was really the only thing that was left.
All right, well, thank you, Jay.
Good job.
Let's see, do I have anything else? Nope, doesn't look like it.
Next to last, that map's pretty. Good job.
Thank you. All right.
All right, so that, unless I'm missing someone, that's all for today for very reasons.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you,
Very
Jay.
good. For all these, I think you should give yourself a pat on the back. I think you did very well on this. So this is your first time having it. I mean, well, it's not your first time presenting, but you all did very good. I will have to say, the girl at the first still took the cake as being the best speaker.
Yeah. All right, so
Okay,
is
good
there
job.
anything, yeah, let's take a couple, we have a couple minutes. Let's just take a couple minutes on things that stood out to you. What things stood out to you that really, no, you can sit down, like not on Jay's, but on everyone's presentation, what stood out to you? And you as well, what stood out to you that you really great?
What stood out to me, oh, you did read. I can't stand it. Don't read.
Listen up, yeah, hardly any.
You did not read. I don't even think I.
Got
would
it.
have told
Attention,
you about that. I thought many of you, all went together. Many of you use these maps. See, these interactive maps, use the map as you talk. Zoom in, zoom out, point here, point there. Take the map, and that's what makes it the difference between being a story map and being PowerPoint. So use your map as much as possible. I thought all of you, or a good many of you, picked some kind of unique problems. Howard's,
A homeless one was good, I mean, there's a lot that's stood out.
You had very interesting and different topics. So also, I don't know, I thought you didn't mind from this class.
No, they don't, they're well practiced, I would say incredibly well
I
practiced.
go into classes, all I did, any whining at all.
They never mind.
You just have an A for no whining.
They're very professional. They're ready for the work world. They're ready for college. Absolutely. All right. Anyone else want to add anything that you really like about your peers' presentation?
So I'm gonna talk about what I liked about Parker's presentation. She didn't just talk about like the homeless population, and she also talked about like even like the LGBTQ community, which I really like because a lot of times, yeah, you know, not a lot of people are aware, especially people who are not in the community. A lot of LGBTQ people end up homeless.
Yeah. All right, so that's social awareness. We appreciate that. All right, we are really coming down to the end of class. Thank you, everyone. For those of you who have partners missing and we have to push it, I will record those. Catherine will have a chance to watch your presentations as well. I know we got hit a little bit with some issues this week in this class, but absolutely fantastic job.
Very
on
good,
this class.
very good.
Really impressive. Emma?
And you've only been here for what, 4 days in January or something like this?
Grades, give us a minute, give us a little bit. Okay, yeah. We will talk to each other and ultimately it's a great conversation. Okay, thank you, everyone. Just relax for a couple minutes, get packed up, and I'm just gonna wait for you.
Very good.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say. You're moving towards the base. I would say that's the main. But they were beautiful, every single one. Yes. Yeah, so then the next time, let's talk about that. We'll give them that to us. If these guys will run it, I'm so glad. That didn't help them. That's what's. Yes. All right, well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
We'll be in touch. All right, thank you, everyone. Yes, great.
I was thinking about my.
All right, guys, listen, I gotta leave.
You just think that I see it.
Bye.
Go good.
Yes, go
Thinking.
Bye.
Like,
Bye, Catherine. I'll be
show,
in
do like travel time from the nearest airport for any given point.
I love it. I love it. You guys
And it probably
seriously?
correlate about the risk of different.
Seriously, as the bell rings, that was knocked it out of the park, right? You guys are amazing. Look here. Oh, good job.
Or maybe how hard it,
I
maybe how,
consider that a
Good job,
success.
Jay.
maybe
That was
how,
fantastic.
how many qualified professionals there are in different.
I
areas.
love it. And I love that you got those ideas from watching them. And I have the recording too, so you'll be able to
They
rewatch
do
it.
have a recording.